Johnathon Majors has allegedly assaulted his girlfriend in the back of a taxi cab after his girlfriend had allegedly seen him texting another woman. Majors allegedly assaulted his girlfriend by strangling and slapping her, and after the incident, both parties spent the night in separate places. Majors was arrested by the police despite reportedly calling the police himself, and was later sent to court where he would be released without bail, yet prosecutors charged him of various crimes. Most recently, a text conversation from the girlfriend to Majors has been released, in which the girlfriend takes blame for the situation, but it's still a little unclear exactly what happened in the situation. But of course, everyone on Twitter has their own take on the situation, despite almost none of them being there. But that certainly doesn't stop some people from making wild accusations on Twitter, and at the end of the day, the truth will be revealed, as Majors is supposed to appear in court in May. However, we might not have to wait so long to see if the Twitter goblins are right. If there really was abuse in this or any relationship, a lot of people assume that the victim, usually the woman, would just speak up about the abuse. So why doesn't the victim of abuse speak up? And in the case of Johnathon Majors, what can we look for to see if abuse is really what's happening here? Recent research answers these questions by identifying how these abusive relationships manifest in the first place, as well as the psychology behind them. Now, this is a sensitive topic, so continue at your own risk. The research identifies 8 stages that abusive relationships tend to follow. The pre-relationship stage is characterized by the abuser having abused other people in the past, but often denies or projects these feelings, saying that they were the ones being abused instead. However, an easier place to identify an abuser is in stage 2, in the early relationship. This is where the abuser acts in normal romantic ways, just very severe or very sped up. They usually engage in love bombing and oftentimes try to move in with their victim as fast as possible. Victims have described their abuser in this stage as caring, loving, and charismatic, but also jealous and possessive. In stage 3, the abuser and the victim are officially in a relationship, and this is where the abuser's character begins to change. Abusers start dishing out insults and criticism even when you're doing nice things for them. This often manifests in something like the abuser leaving the house and they want the house to be cleaned in a very specific way. And if even one tiny detail is not the way the abuser likes it, they will lash out in anger with insults and criticisms galore. And oftentimes these insults and criticisms will get played off as a joke by the abuser. It's also common that the abuser threatens violence and or acts on violence. Now at this point, from a third person's perspective, it may seem obvious that the victim should get out of the situation they're in as fast as possible. But there are 2 main psychological factors that keep the victim in the relationship. The first of which is called effort justification bias, which according to Wikipedia is a person's tendency to attribute the value of an outcome they put effort into achieving as greater than the objective value of the outcome. Essentially, the longer the victim stays in the relationship and continues to take the abuse, they subconsciously value being in the relationship more and more, as their brain thinks, well, if I'm going through all this struggle to be in this relationship, then I must really like being in this relationship. Sometimes the victim is able to push past the psychological barrier into the trigger stage, which they threaten to leave the abuser. But this often leads to stage 5, called escalation, in which the abuser acts really nice all of a sudden, and then out of nowhere will switch back into being incredibly abusive. This is where that second psychological principle comes in, where the abuser often puts the victim on a schedule of reinforcement known as a variable interval schedule. Variable meaning random and interval meaning time. So behavior that happens on a variable interval schedule is behavior that happens at random times. By acting in this way, the abuser is reinforcing the victim's love for them. And behavior reinforced on a variable interval schedule has a moderate but steady response rate and is very resistant to extinction, meaning that the victim's love for the abuser steadily grows and is going to be very hard to get rid of. And this is where things get very dark. In stage 6, the abuser starts making serious threats, and in stage 7, these threats start getting planned out. And if the victim survives to stage 8, they are left with depression, anxiety, and or PTSD for years to come, while completely losing and forgetting who they are as a person. And even after all of that, research has found that over 70% of domestic abuse injuries and deaths happen after the victim leaves. Hopefully this video has provided you with enough information to recognize these patterns. There is help out there, and in the case of Johnathon Majors, be on the lookout for the signs as more information comes out. As always, the APA citation as well as the link to the original research is in the description below, and I'll see you next time.